Hello, I'm David Eames, and welcome to the On Your Mind podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Mikey and Owen, and today I want to talk about existential freedom. I'll give a little bit of intro about that. I take an existential approach to therapy, and that sees there are 4 givens that we all have to deal with in life. And those givens are those things that are inescapable, are mortality, meaninglessness, isolation, i.e. being trapped within the confines of our own skull, and freedom. Now, what freedom means is choice, that we never do anything in life that we don't choose to do. How does that strike you, Mikey?
Strikes me in a way that everything you said then, I've dealt with and had to come to terms with. I'm somebody that really struggles to work for people because I don't like to be in their time frame and in their pocket. I like to have choice all the time in the ways that I conduct my life. Sometimes I then make it a bit too hectic, as you've seen today. The builder turns up, as you've seen since we've been doing these episodes actually. But I have worked really hard to conduct that life for myself because I love variety. I love the ability to just put in the days what I want in them. So even though it looks taxing and hard, I love this. I love that we've got some young people coming later to help on a stage. We've got rap workshops after that. I really enjoy the life that I'm conducting for myself, and the freedom part was the biggest part in my nature. And I've been trapped in working at Thornton's, working for many builders and people like that, and just being treated disrespectfully, being in their pocket in their time a lot of the my existence. So yeah, I think what you're speaking of there really strikes strongly with me. I didn't know what the term was, but I do think if people can find this solution on how you find choice and freedom in your life, you get your life handed back to you.
Yeah. You see, people often think that they don't have choices. Oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to go to work. But everything is a choice.
Yeah.
Because if somebody puts a gun to your head, you've always got the option of saying, well, pull the trigger then.
Yeah.
What do you think, Owen? Do you have choices in your life?
Massively. And I think I'm extremely grateful for how my life has sort of worked its way out, because there's been a number of times when, like Mikey said, I've been not stuck, but I was blind to see what the options were. Because I mean, you hear a lot of people, people that are well off or have made it already, and it's really easy for them to say, just do this, just follow your dreams, just blah, blah, blah. But, when you've got a mortgage to pay, or you've got kids to look after, or dogs to walk, or whatever, you can't just go, I'm just going to up and go to wherever. It's extremely difficult. And, I mean, I'm extremely fortunate that the position I'm in now, but I'm probably working harder than I've ever worked before. And I think what that takes is it takes a lot of the experiences that I've gone through being sat connected to a phone in a call centre on a Sunday at 11 o'clock. And don't get me wrong, it's not always bad, but getting yourself up to get there and having bad Mondays now still gives me anxiety. Just the way that the Mondays have been ingrained into me. Sunday night's bad, Monday morning's bad. It's all bad. And one of the things that me and Dan sat down and discussed was like, no, there's no bad Mondays anymore. And fortunately, I'm now in a position that I don't necessarily know what day it is. It's only because the kids are at school, or it's only because they're off. So the thing is, it's easy to just be one of those people that go, follow your dreams and achieve and all the rest of it. But there's always a plan, in my opinion. And I think if I reflect on where I've got to where I am now, a lot of the key decisions were made by myself subconsciously. And it was only to just try and just dip my toe. So it was slowing everything down and just taking my time a little bit, and either not necessarily starting a business, but there was like test trading, trying to do websites, or trying to do design, or I did like garden clearances on different bits of just to give myself a little bit of freedom so that I wasn't forever marching to the beat of someone else's drum. And not all the drums are negative, but plenty were. And I think, when you can sit back and look and think, well, such and such has made this much money and I've only got this, and it's like, well, if it wasn't for me doing this, you wouldn't have had any money. But there's no good in me being negative about that. It's up to me to change my path to say, all right, nice one. Thanks for the heads up. Thanks for showing me the way. I'm now going to do it myself. Does that make sense?
It does. I'd like... sorry, David. I'm just going to say, I do wonder, though, with the mindset that I've got now, working for somebody else, I think I'd find a lot easier time within it, because the way that I was ending up spending the money was then going out, getting drunk, spending it on expensive clothing and watches or things like that, and then I'd have no money at the end of it, and that was the loop. I felt trapped in that cycle. But now I've sort of repositioned my thinking. If I was working at a business, like you say, working for somebody else and beating somebody else's drum, it's not always bad. I think with the attitude that I've got now, I could be more comfortable and confident under somebody else and helping them and feel like I'm not trapped in their time anymore. I've repositioned my thinking in the way that I'd spend money. It'd be more family orientated. I just think I'd have a better philosophy around it, if that makes sense.
But you only get that through experiencing both, don't you?
Yeah.
But if you're working for someone else, you're choosing to work for someone else. This is a whole thing. That when existential philosophy first started talking about the idea of freedom, people were going, well, this is a crazy idea. If everyone can do whatever they want, then surely society is going to break down. But the thing is, if you are free, you're also responsible. That's the other side of it. You can't blame anyone else.
Yeah.
You're responsible for your own life.
There's a Simpsons episode on this, isn't there? Do
Is
you know
that
when Bart
normally?
said, I don't feel like it, and then everybody in the society starts being this, well, I don't feel like it, and they try and build this society together. But actually, they all get tired of it after a while because they want responsibility in their life. They want something to do.
Yeah, so freedom isn't about, follow your dreams, you can be everything you want to be, because that patently isn't true. You know, there are limitations for all of us. But it's you choose what you do. And sometimes the choice that you're making is the least worst choice.
Yeah.
Because there aren't any particularly pleasant ones.
No.
But if you're owning it, this is why it's so aptly called freedom, in my view. Because if you can embrace it, it's a really liberating idea. That no one makes you do anything, that you choose to do what you choose to do within the confines that you have, whatever they happen to be. And that means not just choosing what you do for a living. It's like if you've got housework to do, if you've got a meal to cook, you choose to do that. You choose to love people, as we spoke about in our last session.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for somebody then that, say, got in a position where they chose to go to a certain job, then they got the mortgage, but then things did start to crumble and fall apart, so they've lost their wife, something wrong went on, and then they don't like the position that they're in, but they do have them hangovers where they've got to think about the mortgage, they've got to think about the safety, but they do want out. What advice do you have in that realm?
Well, is there a way out financially? Do you choose a different path? You can maybe choose how you think about things. You can maybe choose to get some therapy, some help for it, or to ask friends for help. It's the not choosing.
Yeah.
We often get trapped in this place because there's the idea of existential anxiety means that we resist making choices because every choice that we make involves a loss. There's that road that we don't walk down. And we are, as a species, very much affected by what's called loss aversion. We're more interested in avoiding losses than we are in obtaining gains. And there's quite a bit of research that backs that up.
I can see that.
And so people don't choose things because it's if I do that, then I won't do that. But not recognising that they're not choosing is itself a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think this is a really good conversation and important. And I like the empowerment that it gives people in you do have a choice. You need time with yourself to really think things through and take the power back instead of just, no, I'm in this position now, this is where I'm at. A lot of people put their age on it as well. I'm 40 now, I can't do that. But actually, no, you've always got a choice.
Yeah, but sometimes it's true, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I was never going to win a 100 metres medal.
I get it. Yeah.
You can't go and be a professional footballer
but
now.
Even as a kid, you've not got the right genetics for it, perhaps.
But say that was your passion, like you loved running, there's probably some nuanced choice within it, and could you go and help somebody else pursue it if you've got a lot of knowledge?
Or you can choose to be the best that you can be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you look, I'm part of a fight company.
Yeah.
I never had a fight in a cage. but all my colleagues have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could have imposter syndrome and feel a bit like, oh, well, actually, I'm the best at doing the drawing, or I'm the best at this and this and this. So I think you do have to be comfortable with yourself and sit down and have a word with yourself, because imposter syndrome is a weird feeling, because it's always impacted as well by, I wouldn't say jealous people, but I'd say maybe lost people that haven't like come to terms with the fact that they are in terms of themselves free, because they look over. People used to leave work, so someone would leave egg, for example, and they'd go on their own, and there'd always be someone going, yeah, and it was always negative. Like there was always something stuck in their throat with the fact that this guy's done it and he's trying, and like you got two choices. Well, you got three choices. You can either be completely impartial, you could be negative, or you could be positive, in my opinion. And it's always strange when someone's so keen to just pull this person down because ultimately they're unhappy in their position, or they're not brave enough to do what this other person's done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
And I think for me, because obviously I've had a few different jobs and I've been around different people, I've seen so many people try and fail, and I've seen so many people try and succeed. So it's a case of like just not giving up. Do you know what I mean? It might not be the first thing, but I have experienced it as well, where I've worked for people that have started with literally nothing, and their whole background, their whole story is, I came over, I didn't have much money, and I've put it into this, and now I'm achieving, and I'm here in life. And then when I made that decision to sort of break free, to be myself, to achieve what you've done, basically. So hats off to you. You've taken over the world, you've done everything, and you've achieved, and now you can support your entire family. I want to do that now. And I become a pariah, and it's kind of like, whoa, hold on. And so it was always a real difficult one for me, because I was forever justifying what I was doing. And I've realised that I don't have to justify anything. Do you know what I mean? Because ultimately, you find yourself making these split decisions without even considering a lot of stuff, because either gut feeling or whatever it is. But you find yourself making a decision, and it's a case of that's your choice.
You make the choice and you live with the outcome, because you're responsible for it.
Precisely.
And it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And the caterpillars on the branch are looking up at the butterfly saying, you'll never get me up in one of those.
Exactly. Yeah, for real.
Because it's that, not everything works. It's this whole thing. I am not saying you can be whatever you want to be. And I'm not saying that people are authors of their own destiny, because there are other factors that come into play. And sometimes just the weather's against you.
Yeah.
Literally.
And what's been happening, economically over the last few years, the stuff that you can't control. But the thing that you can control is the choices that you make, and the choices about how you think about it. And it's that being ready to meet with, as Kipling put it, triumph and disaster. I love those lines from the poem If you could make a heap of all your winnings and risk them on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss.
Yeah.
It's because life doesn't work out sometimes.
And it's not changed since then.
No.
It's just the circumstances around it. You might have an iPad in your hand as opposed to a stone tablet, but it's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was part of a conversation yesterday, and it made me really sad, because it's a friend of mine that I've not spoke to for a little while. You know them as well, and they got married a couple of years ago after not knowing this person very long, and he then spoke to my other friend and said, I don't think it'll last 5 years. And it's kind of one of them where I think, that's really bad. Because if you're only 2 or 3 years in and you've already written it off at 5, what's making you get to 5? I'm not saying divorce is always the option, or giving up is the option, or whatever, but it's not always giving up. It's you've got one shot, you've got one life, you get one go, one spin. Be happy, in my opinion, the best you can. And it just made me sad that someone can sit and they've got this weight on their shoulders, like they've made this decision to get married, they've tried, it's not quite worked, but because of perception, or letting themselves or others down, or having this overall guilt, then they're not willing to call it quits until, 5 years. 5 years is a good number. Let's call it 5 years. Oh yeah, we can have absolute horrible feelings between each other for the next 3, but that's all right. And I just think, bro, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be an option.
Yeah. And the thing is, what's the choice today?
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily in 5 years' time. What am I going to choose today? Because it's that valuing every single day. Like that whole thing about horrible Mondays.
Yeah.
Any day above the grass is a good one.
Exactly.
You know, and every day is of equal value. Every moment is of equal value. We may not add as much value into it ourselves, but you know, we have a limited number of them.
Well, I think I mentioned this in another podcast, and since I'm kind of self-employed because I do what I need to do when I need to do it. So I've got a freedom, shall we put it? But what I've noticed, one of the most important things, is that I acknowledge every day now. So before, you know, when you have a weekend and it's gone past like a Porsche, gone. It's because you don't get up and go, it's Saturday. You get up a bit later maybe. You have a cooked breakfast. You do whatever you want. And before you know it, it's 7 o'clock because time flies when you're having fun. But when we're off, I make sure that we acknowledge those days. It's Tuesday, we're going to do this or whatever. And kind of like put a pin in each day so that when we're on holiday, instead of going, oh my God, it's Friday. We enjoy everything else. And I'm not just saying, come on, we've got to do something because it's Tuesday. But I think we relax so quickly and fall back into place on a weekend or a holiday or a break that then the negative is the work, is the grind. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a grind, because if you embrace it and you're enjoying it, or you're counting it down, you're counting them all down equally.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think personally for me, it makes a big difference. Like when I was at work and I was hating it, I would wake up in the morning on a Monday and go, soon be Tuesday, and then soon be Wednesday. But I'm almost wishing my life away.
I was going to say, do you have any advice and practical steps that people could implement listening to this, where it showcases how powerful making a choice can become? Because I'm thinking that this is the art of perception. And for people, I work with a lot of young people, and they don't believe they've got a choice. They often count themselves out, they call themselves dumb, particularly a lot of bullying going off at the minute, and they don't understand that they've got a choice outside of this, and you can change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, and you can bring choices to the table and change the outcome of this. But they may just feel so lost and isolated or ostracized from the group that they don't have the choice. So are there any practical tips, like even just picking the breakfast for the day and knowing that you've done that, and constantly making different choices where you start to empower yourself more and more and more, and then you make bigger decisions then? It's
the recognition that everything is a choice.
Yeah.
That's why I can't emphasise enough, it is liberating. Now, the three of us are in a fortunate position of doing things for a living that are intrinsically interesting most of the time. But I've also done things that were less interesting, but I've always tended to enjoy my job.
Yeah.
I never used to dread Mondays and try and make the most out of it. And that, I think, led to me doing a better job and being more secure in my employment.
You've changed my life in even just when you're doing the pots, just do the pots, be there, be present in it, and make that into something. And I genuinely do now. I put on a podcast, but I honestly look forward to doing the pots. It's a bit of me time. I'm fully immersed in the podcast, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying that moment.
Yeah, you're
fully
choosing to do it. No one's making you do it.
Yes, yeah.
But that's the retraining of your brain. If you retrain your brain on a Sunday night, that's the best night.
Yeah.
I love Friday night because I get to go on PlayStation with my friends. I love other nights, but I know that this night I've got no responsibilities as such. So I really look forward to it. But that's because it's been like that for 15 years. But you can retrain your brain to really enjoy the other bits as well. Like we started at one point on a Sunday, we used to nip out and we'd go to Matlock or something with the kids, only to get chips. But it took the drain out of Sunday. Like you get to 4 or 5 o'clock and it's like, right, pack lunches, school uniforms, have you had a bath? What do you need? What's this? Have you done your homework? And it's the drain and the draw of all that, but it's not all a drain and a draw. It's actually a little journey that these guys are on, these little guys that you've made, that you've like poured so much into. So it's actually...
And you've chosen to have them.
Precisely.
Yeah. You know, you've said to me, when sometimes life's difficult with the kids, I said, well, you should have kept your dick in your pants.
Yeah, for real. And the thing is, it's that slap that you kind of need to go...
Yeah.
Because, and I know I mentioned this before, that I've had a friend that struggled to conceive and had an Instagram dedicated to being sad and struggling and all the rest of it, which is devastating. And then now they've got more kids than they wanted, and it's just moaning about kids, and you're like, bro. The problem is to be outside looking in. It's very easy to criticise or very easy to see the problems that someone else is facing, whereas obviously I voice all of my opinions and concerns to you, and you will soon let me know or remind me. Just remember what you were like at 13, 14. Just remember this, and sometimes it's just that I have to be slowed down enough to hear the advice, because during the midst of the row or the frustration or whatever, it's very difficult. But again, I choose to engage in a row with a 14-year-old whose frontal lobe is not quite active at the moment, and it's ridiculous. But the problem is the principles that are ingrained in you that you feel are important are equally as ridiculous, because I wouldn't have an argument with a hedgehog, because that's obvious. It's not going to work. But because I know my daughter from being nothing to being what she is now, I know that I've been able to have a normal conversation with her before. And I think because I'm struggling with the transition of her being a teenager, because it is a completely different brain. And it's terrifying, because you go from 1 minute of going, all right, mate, everything good? And it's like, yeah, I've got time to talk to you. We can have a hug. We can talk. We can get on. We can cook together. To now me going, all right, mate, and her breathing fire on me.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, but you have a choice that she doesn't. You can choose to be the grown-up.
Precisely, which I really struggle with, because I'm such a child in the best of times.
But it's always just doing your best, isn't it?
Yeah.
And knowing things like this, and then trying to come back to it whenever you've slipped. You've got to forgive yourself and go, oh, that's okay.
Choose to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Choose to accept yourself. No, when you talk about young people struggling, when I work with teenagers, they're often the easiest to fix.
Really?
Yeah, because...
Can you come and do some sessions here?
Because they're used to change.
Yeah.
Somebody that's been around for 40 or 50 years, they can get quite set in their ways. Patterns are very fixed.
Yes.
But teenagers, everything's fluid.
I would actually love you to come and do some sessions here. I can pay you for that.
Yeah, and to try and get across the idea, you see... Like you probably remember that the first failed love affair, probably not Harry, because his first was his last love affair. But for those of us that had a lost love, it's like the hardest thing in the world. Life is over. You're never going to get over it.
Yeah.
But as things happen to you in life, you build resilience, because you recognise that you do get through dark times. But for young people, that doesn't seem to be the case. That life's ruined. I've failed that exam. I've not got the things that I want. I'm not fitting in socially. My life is ruined.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get across the idea of choosing to see life as a longer game.
Yeah. And I think as well, what I've noticed myself recently is it doesn't always have to be a teachable moment. You can make a choice of how you react to something.
Yeah.
Because like school's just started. We've had 6 weeks and she's gone into year 10. I hated school. I despised everything about school. I wouldn't go back now for £1 million. I absolutely hated it. And she doesn't like... She's way better than me, way more academic. She's got a wicked little group of friends. But the thing is that she'll get frustrated with something. And I'm trying to parent that by... She'll say, such and such teachers are this or that, and they hated this and don't like it. And instead of me going, oh man, that sucks. That's horrible. Yeah, I had that when I was there. Or something like that. I try and give her a positive, like, yeah, well, maybe. And it's like, sometimes...
Well, that's a bloke trying to fix things.
Of course.
Masculine energy.
Yeah, I'm not trying to mansplain to my daughter, or dadsplain, or whatever you want to call it. But it's strange, because you automatically go into that, like, oh, well, just think of it this way. Whereas if my friends' kids came up to me and were like, I hate school, I hate this, yeah, me too, shit, I hated this guy, I once did this in school, and I'd share an anecdote about me being a complete dickhead that got me sent to the office. Whereas with mine, I'm more like, have you thought about it like this? And if I was out of my body seeing myself do that, I'd probably slap myself. Because I'm not being real in the first place, but in the second place, I'm not learning from it not working. Do you know what I mean? I need to review my own approach.
There's a few things that come to mind through this. So I love this conversation, and there's this talk on fault and responsibility. A lot of people go into sort of victim mode, and it's everyone else's fault. It's this fault, that fault. But a responsibility comes to the choice that you can now implement in your life to change your reality from that. But I've got a rational mind now, I feel, to some degree. So when I make choices, I know the consequences and the implications that can come from that. And I think that's an important part in the conversation, is to just, whatever you're thinking of, do have a bit of a sit with yourself and think what that can become. Because, say, if you don't like somebody, it's your choice. You could punch them, but you do have to think of the consequence surrounding that.
Yeah.
And a kid,
Or you just leave them alone.
Kid going to school, I hate school. Oh, it's my choice. I don't have to go. Okay, that's fine. But what about the repercussions of that? And I think that's an important thing, is sit with yourself a little bit and consider your choices.
Yeah, but actually making the choice often reduces the anxiety.
Yes.
It's that loss anxiety comes in before we make the choice. But once we've made it, we accept the loss.
Yeah.
And we accept the gains as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That it's that the choosing not to choose, but unconsciously choosing to not choose.
It's like having
Because
a stone in your
sometimes-
shoe, isn't it?
See, sometimes it's the right thing to not choose. So when people go through relationship difficulties, maybe someone's been unfaithful in a relationship, worked with a few clients through this, and they don't know whether the relationship's going to work or not, whether there's a way forward. And sometimes I'm suggesting, well, how about choosing to not choose for now?
Okay.
Just to see what
Give it a minute.
happens. Yeah. But that's a positive
I
thing
like
to
that,
do.
yeah.
You've not really got enough information now. You don't know how you're going to feel in 3 months' time.
That's lovely, actually. That's what made me feel light there. Just not that I've got anything to decide on,
Yeah.
but I thought that's a really nice approach around choosing not to choose.
Yeah.
Is the power.
So
That's
really, I guess
beautiful,
it's about what I'm speaking about is engaging with your world thoughtfully.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Goethe, the German philosopher, I think he said, sometimes it's only the thought of suicide that's got me through a dark night.
Yeah.
And it's that idea that it's choosing to live is something.
Yeah. And I think
I
regardless
love that.
regardless of whatever's hanging over your head, there's always something, but it's how you process that. For me, I mean, I can remember years and years ago, I had a motorbike and I took Stace from my house to her house, and she was on the back, and I only had a provisional license. So we got stopped by the police, and I wasn't doing anything wrong speed-wise or anything, and I've been riding motorbikes since I was 6, so I was fully capable. I just hadn't had my full test, so it was illegal.
Yeah.
So basically the policeman made me push the bike back home, which was miles, and it was one of those things that I was fine all the time, but I could drop myself into this really dark hole by just thinking about when that's going to be resolved. I hadn't had a letter from court, or I hadn't had a letter from the police for like 9 months. So I'd almost got to the end of the 9 months where I was feeling a lot lighter. If it was holding me down here, like down by my waist, I'd almost got to my ears, like I was almost free of it. Then the letter landed, and then it was twice as heavy. And then it could be Christmas Day, and I could be opening presents and having the best time. But then this really strange, unsettling, like stupid thing, I'd make myself think of it because I wanted to try and deal with it. I wanted there to be a solution. I wanted to cope, but because there wasn't anything on the table yet to know that this is once I got the date to go into court, it kind of cleared it up. But it was and that can happen with anything. Anything at all, like having to do the shopping or knowing that I've got an email to send out for work and I've got 3 days to do it, and then before you know it, I'm doing it at the last minute on the third day. Like if I just need to plan a bit better or whatever, but that's not always the case. Like with the bike, I couldn't plan it because I completely messed up. It was my own fault, but I wanted to reset the day and do it faster and do it better, if you know what I mean. Like when you play a video game and you start a level and you get it wrong within a minute, you restart. But you don't get that option in life, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, life needs a rewind button sometimes.
precisely that.
Save.
Hindsight.
Yeah, because it's tricky, isn't it? What can you do?
I was thinking, when we're in that position now and you're overthinking and it's getting heavier and heavier, I think that thing David alluded to there, though, is making it a choice that I'm not going to face that now or think of that because I'm making that choice. But it is difficult to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, say you're awaiting a diagnosis of some potentially serious illness. That is a really scary thing.
Yeah.
So the only choice you could make is to think in terms of, okay, I'm anxious, but that's okay because I'm supposed to be anxious now. There's a good reason for it.
Yeah.
That you can't affect the outcome. There's this whole idea, which I really disagree with, that that you can sort of magnetize things into your life. You can control the universe by what you ask for. It's absolute balls.
Yeah.
Absolute. It's so misleading for people, and it's kind of victim blaming, a lot of that.
Yeah.
So disagree with that. So I want to be absolutely clear that's not the case. But it's about making the choices within the limits that your choices are available to you.
Yeah, and if you dig yourself deeper by making bad choices, then you can only make different choices to change it.
I have in my life screwed up in almost every possible way.
Yeah.
The only thing I haven't done is not finally ruin my marriage.
Nice.
And it works quite well. But I've been wrong in almost every possible way. So the odds are I'm probably wrong in my opinions now. But that's okay because I'm open to change.
Yeah. I think the thing that I struggle with, or the thing that affects me more, is the guilt. Because, like with the bike, I know that I'd done something wrong. I'd made a bad decision. It was silly. I shouldn't have done it, and all the rest of it. But it was mainly when I was probably enjoying life more that I'd have this like little nagging guilt in the back of my mind that go, "You shouldn't be happy now because you've done this." And I don't know what it is. It's like this really strange way to like bring myself down because I felt guilty of being happy. So I'm having a birthday or doing something fun, and then it's like, yeah, but don't forget about the court date. It's like, fuck's sake, man. Like it was, and it's me sort of managing that because it still happens now with certain things.
Yeah,
and it's like you said, processing it, either putting it in a virtual box in my head or just like labeling it in my head, March 2027, whatever it is, and we'll open that when we need to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I think for me, it's all right to be scared or nervous or worried because it's a normal feeling. But it's not something that, with the toxic masculinity that we grow up with, or back in the day, especially more so than now, it was all boys don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. You're a man, you do this, and it's kind of. I like to know that it's all right to be sad or be upset because it's just an emotion and it's natural.
So it's about being an independent being.
Yeah.
Almost non-conformity because you're choosing. You're not doing what other people tell you should be doing.
Well,
but you might want to listen to
I've never done that.
No, but you might want to listen because they might have something useful to say.
Yeah, true.
I think that what you were talking about there, it's the laws of attraction. It's quite a woo-woo idea nowadays, and it doesn't really suit me, but everyone seems to have gravitated to it and find it very trendy. But I think what the people that do follow that and pursue that, and it works well for them, because what they're doing is making good choices. They're spotting signs, and then with that sign spotting, they're thinking more about, oh, what am I supposed to do in this situation? So actually what they're becoming is good choice makers, and that's why it's working for them, because...
Or it's misattribution.
What do you mean by that?
Well, things... It's like, for instance, the whole idea of white privilege. That we have, some people in society have privileges that others don't. And you're often not aware of those privileges. Like the privilege to be able to go into a shop. There was, on the Antiques Roadshow recently, there was one of the experts, a black expert, was talking his experience when he first started doing antiquing and going into shops, and they were always watching him because as soon as he was black, he was going to nick something. Now, I'd never been aware of my privilege of going into an antique shop and people not think I'm going to steal something.
Yes.
So, these laws of attraction thing, it's this misattribution that, these actions have brought things in, but it might be other factors altogether that are doing it. It can indeed lead to better choices, but it may lead to worse choices.
That's what I'm saying is, for those that it is working for, they've got in their head a philosophy, or they've got an ideology where things are going to come to me. So they're spotting signs. Then they're sat there looking out for things, but it's being actionable with that. So for people that do think things are going to come my way, and things always come your way, you just don't see to spot them. So they've got. But
the overconfidence can lead to wrong choices as too. Do you see what I'm saying, Mike? You got that belief.
But what I mean
is, I'm blessed. Like God's plan is for me.
And if it is working out well for them, that's the choice making. They're learning how to make choices with their life. So I do think it's woo woo to me. I don't believe in that thought process, but I'm saying they're taking their time with those choices and being actionable with it, and that's what the laws of attraction needs to become, is being actionable. Because it's a trendy thing for people, isn't it? A lot of people, I think it was a documentary that came out, The Secret, which was actually ran by a guy who did a pyramid scheme and got really rich from it, took everyone to Arizona and put them in a sweatbox, and people were dying. It was a crazy scheme.
I'll say it.
But I do just think those that I've met that do believe in that manifestation and things coming into their life, who are good business owners. I've got a friend that really ferociously believes in it, but it's because when things come into his life and he gets a lot of opportunities through what he creates, it's because he gets to sit there and think, right, what am I going to do with this now? And actually he's just a good choice maker.
But it's this misattribution error. So, for instance, the power of prayer. I'm praying God to deliver me from this thing. And it doesn't happen. Oh, thank you, God, you delivered me from this thing.
Yeah.
Or it did happen. Oh, God, I recognise you need to test me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's essentially a coping mechanism. But the other thing, what you're saying then about your friend, the big thing that someone said to me once was, and it opened my eyes massively. And this was before social media, before anything like that. And it was essentially, you don't see what goes on behind closed doors. So your friend that seems to be uber confident and does all the right decisions and all this, you haven't seen him crying himself to sleep, or you haven't seen him fretting about this or worrying about that, or maybe not. But the problem is, the way that I interact with certain people, especially if I've got my work head on, or if I've got my daft dad head on, or whichever part it is, it's a different interaction. When I go and see Sue, David's wife, she gets a completely different Owen to what David does the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Because the utmost respect for this fantastic lady that I adore and that I've got all the time in the world for. But that's not the same Owen 10 minutes later when I'm filling up with petrol or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when Sue talks to you about me, that she will ever tell you what I shouted out the window, or that I cried myself to sleep, or I struggled with this or struggled with that. So this is what I was saying about people that have achieved.
She mistakenly says Owen's lovely.
There you go, exactly. But the people that have achieved, money can back anything. And once you have a little bit, it kind of makes it dangerous, because it puts a bit of a film over everything. Because you can fail more, because you've got more lives in the game. You've got more tries.
Which is the privilege thing.
Precisely. Like if you were down to your last grand, and I said, right, what we're going to do for the bus, you'd need to think, what's the one thing that makes the most money to be able to survive? Because once that grand's gone, you're back at Thornton's.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're not paying your mortgage or whatever it is. So the danger of the money is, because like the pyramid scheme guy, he might have done something really shitty and conned people out of a load of money, but he's now got his stake. And once he's got his stake, that takes a lot of the pressures off, because now he can preach about how simple and do this and do that, which it is easy, because I'm not saying money buys happiness. Absolutely it doesn't. But it goes towards clearing your mind of having the daft little things that most people worry about. Paying for your kids' shoes, paying for dinner, paying for the mortgage, all the rest of it. So it's easy when you've got someone that you think, or they project the fact that they've made it in like a really, you know, when someone makes it in like a really nonchalant way, like, oh no, I don't want to be too big-headed, but what you should do is, it's not always true. Do you know what I mean? And because you don't see all aspects of their life, you'll never see the entire truth.
It has been said, to succeed in life, you need to choose your parents wisely.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because just from a genetic point of view, you know, do you have the intellectual equipment? Have you had the education that you need? Again, these are often privileged things.
Yeah.
For my first school years, we lived in Normanton. That my mum ran a shop in Normanton, and I was at a school where I was, you know, about the only English kid.
Yeah.
And it was great, you know, got on with all the kids there, but I couldn't read. My parents were too busy to teach me. And then we moved to a more middle class area, and within a year I was in the top set in reading.
Yeah.
Now, that's just chance,
circumstance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, you know, even if you've got the brain to do it, you might not have the opportunities to use it.
But that's what always frustrates. You know, when you'll see things in the news like about Syria or these other bits and bobs, and you'll see someone struggling, like trying to make a better life for their, like if it's a mum and their kids or someone, they're trying to make a better life or escape. I would be doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I've got my girls, and my priority is forget everything else. I need to make sure they're okay. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. So it's dead easy to sit back and point and like make a choice to be sort of negative towards these people when essentially we're all human. You would do exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter that someone's got a different accent or a different language or wherever they come from. Everyone's born a baby. Everyone's as important, and everyone is as invested in their own thing as we are. So I think a lot of the times, for me especially, it's just slowing everything down and just evaluating it a bit more rather than jumping to any sort of conclusion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like you say, and I think it's really important that this is a clear message that sometimes the best choice is the worst, the least worst.
The least worst, yeah.
Which is gold, because it's not always good. Sometimes it is a big bucket of shit and you've got to pick your way through to the peanuts. But that's the least worst, because it could. There's worse options to it.
When my wife was diagnosed with cancer in Christmas 2019, and then had a bilateral mastectomy at the beginning of February 2020, we viewed that as really good news.
Yeah, dude.
Because again, we can't change what happened. Well, you could refuse to have treatment, I guess.
Yeah.
But we can only choose the way we think about it, and the way we chose to think about it is, thank goodness that she had a mammogram that showed something up, and then we lived in a society where she could get treated from that.
Yeah.
And thank goodness it wasn't 2 months later when lockdown kicks in. I mean, it was. So it's not bad luck; it's really, really good luck.
Yeah.
And there's a choice there about desperate circumstances, but you can choose how you think about it. Or a client I had last week who was talking about his wife nagging him. I said, hang on, choose to use a different word. How about saying to yourself that she's asking you?
Yeah.
Suddenly it becomes a different conversation.
I think it is that whatever helps you sleep at night, isn't it, sort of attitude? Because when we're saying choices, you know, I think laws of attraction style is a religious pattern for people. I think Christianity, Hinduism, whatever belief pattern you want to go down the line of that makes you sleep well at night and gets you through them hard and tricky days, that's your choice. My personal thing is I'm my own sort of maker of my destiny, and my philosophy more aligns to what we're talking about is make good choices. When situations come, because they always do, I'm going to be a strong choice maker. But if it is following a religion or following a spiritual belief, and that helps you get through these things, that again, it comes back to choice.
Yeah. And it's for each one of us. It's that we're individuals in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And dealing with so, you know, I think I want to wrap this up now.
Yeah.
Because we've been going on long enough.
Yeah.
At the beginning I said, is existential freedom. And that's the thing. The whole idea about choice, embracing that, is liberating. You feel free. So do it. Be free. Thanks.